Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with, let's go through the Bryan Mbeumo stuff. He's the talk of the town, the main player that we are invested in, had 2 bids rejected by Brentford. So let's run through all the latest there and where we're at with that transfer at the moment. So Fabrizio Romano has said that Manchester United are ready to increase their offer for Bryan Mbeumo. It's not just a question of compensation, but also of the structure of the deal and bonuses. United remains confident. The Muppeteers has said that Manchester United's second bid for Mbeumo has moved talks forward. Discussions on add-ons and fees continue, with a new offer expected soon to finalise the deal. And then this came from the Mail, saying that meanwhile, sources have disclosed that United's pursuit of Brentford's Bryan Mbeumo is set to lead to a positive conclusion. United have lodged 2 failed bids for the Cameroonian forward, the last of which was £55 million plus £7.5 million in add-ons. It is understood that the Bees believe the 25-year-old Mbeumo is worth more than Cunha, a theory they believe is backed up by statistics. From his time in West London, Mbeumo scored 20 goals to Cunha's 15 last season and 7 assists to the Brazilians' 6. So Brentford arguing the case that they feel that Mbeumo is worth more then Cunha, trying to get a few extra £1 million out, I think, of the deal. And then United feel they have offered a fair price, but the player has told his club he wants to move to Manchester, and a breakthrough is the expected outcome, according to those with knowledge of the situation. So Mike Keegan from the Daily Mail, who's a good journalist, summarising where we're at, and we knew that anyway. I don't think that's exactly breaking news. We know we've had our second bid rejected by Brentford. We are still in negotiations, though. We are still in talks, and they're arguing the case that they think he's actually worth a little bit more than Cunha, because statistically last season he scored more goals and got more assists, which, you know, is a valid argument, I suppose. The Muppeteers also said, though, a brand new offer will be placed for Bryan Mbeumo within the next day or two. Manchester United want to wrap this deal up this week. So there's still a belief that we want to try and get this deal done as soon as we can, or as long as it's done before pre-season. Then that's the sort of deadline that's being put out there by the media. But whether United are bothered by that deadline or not, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I think Amram is, though. I think Amram wants to get players in as soon as possible. Now, the latest is coming again from Fabrizio Romano, where he said the contacts continue even today between Manchester United and Brentford. Constant contact between the two clubs to reach an agreement for Bryan Mbeumo. There is still no here we go, but Man United keep working on that. United keep advancing. United keep their optimism to make the deal happen. Manchester United are going very strong for Bryan Mbeumo, and now the feeling is quite positive on that one. United will be pushing and pushing again to get the deal over the line. The here we go is a strong possibility for Bryan Mbeumo as a new Manchester United player. So the latest regarding that is we are still in talks. There's been no news at the time of recording this video regarding suggesting whether we've made a third bid or anything like that. It's just we're still in the negotiations with Brentford trying to get this deal done. I don't know what is taking so long, but we don't know what they're asking for and what the parameters around the deal are, the payment structure, the add-ons and all of that jazz. So we're still in that sort of position with Mbeumo. But according to Romano, still in talks over the weekend, constant contacts. We're pushing and pushing to try and get this deal over the line. And according to Romano, there's still a strong possibility that this deal will get done. It's just, you know, we are where we are with it, but give us your shouts on that in the comments. Now, it's believed that once we get Mbeumo done, we're going to start looking at still with the attack, looking at a striker. So the main player we're linked with is Victor Gyökeres. Been some quite interesting developments on him over the weekend. So Sporting President Federico Varandas has said the following regarding Victor Gyökeres. Today, there is a strong chance that Gyökeres will leave. I won't say what the value is. The player knows what it is. I can say that Victor won't leave for 60 million plus 10 million euros. He won't leave. He absolutely won't leave. In recent weeks, we have been paying close attention. I saw a player named Zubimendi, who is 6 months younger than Victor, leave for 65 million euros, and saw Matheus Cunha go to Manchester United for around 75 million euros. So according to Sporting's new sporting director, he's saying that the 60 plus 10 million is not going to be the price that they want for Victor Gyökeres. Remember that was believed to be the fee that he had as a gentleman's agreement, but that was with Sporting's previous sporting director, who has now gone to Manchester City, and the new one saying, yeah, no, we're not agreeing that, which is what's caused the rift and what's caused the conflict between Victor Gyökeres himself and Sporting. Effectively look using other players as an example for the fee, saying that 60, saying that, you know, Zubimende went for 65 and Cunha went for 75 million, but 60 plus 10 is 70. So they're still within the ballpark figure of what they're looking for. But who knows what game Sporting are trying to play regarding Victor Gyökeres. Victor Gyökeres himself, though, has put not a statement, but according to Romano, has said that following Sporting's president's quotes, Victor Gyökeres has no intention to come back and play again. Gyökeres already informed the club about it as per record. Swedish striker insists on the pact made last year over summer exit, now feeling betrayed and tired. So Victor Gyökeres has responded to the president's or to the sporting director's quotes, effectively saying, well, I'm not coming back then, I'm not going to train, which effectively, do you think that devalues Gyökeres? I think it does. Like it's you know, it's one of these, it's a messy situation, but it's not one that we've caused or created or had anything to do with. This is just a player that we want and like and are linked with, and we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. The whole thing with Gyökeres, though, is we're waiting for Arsenal. We're literally waiting for Arsenal to make their move, because if Arsenal go for Gyökeres, then they'll get him, because his preference is Arsenal ahead of United. If Arsenal make a move for Sesko or any other striker and don't go for Gyökeres, then I do think that leaves the door open for us to potentially go back in for him, but it would depend on other clubs potentially as well going for him. But what a messy situation, like for Sporting and the player and things like that as well. But we'll just need to wait and see how we get on. We are still effectively, though, for Gyökeres, we're still waiting for Arsenal. There are rumours that they might be going for Sesko and they're close to getting personal terms agreed. I read a report the other day that said that RB are now potentially going to lower their asking price for Sesko as well. So that is looking plausible, but we'll have to just wait and see what happens. Now, if we don't go for Gyökeres, the other striker we're heavily linked with is Ekitike. So Christian Folk is fairly good when it comes to more specifically Bayern Munich news, but German news is decent as well, saying that Man United, Liverpool and Chelsea remain interested in Hugo Ekitike. Liverpool could make a move once they have sold Darwin Núñez. Manchester United are the only club to have spoken to Eintracht about Ekitike so far, and there have been no negotiations or even an offer as things currently stand. So, according to Christian Folk, I think that's what we knew anyway, to be fair, was that the talk of us in talks with or negotiating with Eintracht Frankfurt were blown massively out of proportion by the media. I think we've made an inquiry and probably made a couple of calls to the agent and to maybe Eintracht Frankfurt to say, like, what's the price you want? What's the asking fee, the contract situation and stuff. But I don't think it's been any more than that at the moment. And then the question is, I mean, are Chelsea still going to go in for Ekitike after they've bought João Pedro and Liam Delap? Who knows? Who knows what Chelsea's transfer business is? They probably will, because I just think if you've got a pulse and you play football, Chelsea are probably going to want to buy you at some point in time. But Liverpool would be a concern. But by all accounts, he is a United fan. But whether that makes a difference or not, who knows? But the big problem with Ekitike is his asking price. Until his asking price drops down, it's going to be one of these. £85 million is the asking price, which is a little bit excessive in my opinion, but give us your thoughts on that. Now, interestingly, though, Sport Build was saying that Arsenal are now seriously considering signing Hugo Ekitike. Now, whether that story's come out as a way for Arsenal to as a negotiating tactic from Arsenal about Benjamin Sesko, who knows? But one to pay attention to as well. But he's on the list of players and strikers that we're looking for: Ekitike, Gyökeres, amongst others. There are, a few other names that have been banded around, but there's no real significant movement on the striker situation. I don't think there's going to be any movement until either Arsenal make their move for a striker, or we get Mbeumo done and maybe get some exits and get some money in. Then maybe we might start throwing some offers around and seeing if we can get some deals done. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, another player we've been linked with for the striker was Ivan Toney. So According to reports in Spain, United are ready to make an offer for former Brentford striker Ivan Toney, which would see him return to the Premier League. The 29-year-old has scored 30 goals for Al Hilal this season and this is believed to have caught the eye of Man United. It is claimed that United are willing to make a £29.9 million offer to bring Toney to Old Trafford this summer. Now, I read that from the Manchester Evening News, and this is why you need to be careful, because it says in the report, reports from Spain. Guess what the Spanish reporters were? Frickin' Fachar who are one of the worst sources of information out there as well. So I would throw that story straight in the bin and say that I think it's absolute nonsense, but it's in the news. And I'm here to bring you the news as well. And it was in the Manchester Evening News as well, but you need to dig a little bit deeper sometimes to find the actual source. And the source was for Chahez, and they're garbage. So I would say take that story with a pinch of salt for now. Now, interestingly, though, Rob Dawson, who's a good source, said that if Manchester United can boost their budget with incoming transfer fees, there might be headroom to move for a midfielder like Atalanta's Ederson or Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton. Now, that would be a turn up for the books. I think we would need to get significant money in to go for Wharton, because I think Crystal Palace are going to ask for, Declan Rice sort of money. I would suspect for Adam Wharton going off for the fees that they're asking for, like Mark Gahey and stuff like that, this transfer window as well. And they apparently want 60 million for Mateta, who's only got a year left on his contract. So I think they would ask for a pretty penny for Adam Wharton, and we would need to obviously sell some significant players in order to get that sort of cash available. But Ederson's a player that we've been linked with for a couple of years now. Alfredo Padula said that last summer, Man United offered 50 million euros and Atalanta wants 60 million euros. Man United and Atalanta are currently in talks, and we'll have to wait and see if anything significant drops from these discussions in the near future. So according to Alfredo Padula, United are in talks currently with Atalanta regarding Ederson. Whether those talks are being blown out of proportion, though, and it's similar to what we've said before, where they are inquiring about players, they're speaking to agents, speaking to clubs, and just doing their due diligence around prices and contracts and availability, and it's being over exaggerated by media and journalists, potentially. But with Ederson, he is definitely a player of interest. We've had bids for him. He's clearly a player that we like at the club. So but again, a lot of that budget's going to depend on exits. And we're going to run through all the exit news in a second. But yeah, interesting. Keep an eye on it for you. Let me know what you think about the midfield. Do you think, Adam Wharton, I know from previous videos, is a name that some of you would like. What about Ederson? Give us your shouts on that in the comments. Be interesting to hear what you think regarding that. Now, just sticking with incomings, not necessarily an incoming, but really good positive news regarding JJ Gabriel has decided to stay at Manchester United after key meetings with Jason Wilcox and Matt Hargreaves, which changed his mind about leaving this summer. Now, that came from Nave Soto, who's a good source. Now, that's really positive because JJ Gabriel is seen as like the Neymar of his age group, 14 years old, already made some appearances for the 18s last season, scored and assisted goals as well. He is believed to be one of the best young prospects to come out of United, and if not across the world, one of the top talents for his age group. So the fact that that he's not leaving because Barcelona and there's plenty of teams that are all interested for this kid because he is very, very highly regarded. So that's really good that we've managed to tie him down. Romano has said that JJ Gabriel and Manchester United, the agreement to sign a new deal for the young talent is set to be sealed, all completed. The contract will be valid for the next 2 years after key intervention by Jason Wilcox to avoid losing one of the best and most wanted talents. So that's positive from us to manage to get JJ Gabriel at least on another 2 years, and then hopefully by then we'll see how he develops and see if there's a pathway, potentially into the first team or to the 21s, and see how his career progresses from there. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below, as I am sure that you will. Now, it's believed once the main talk is, we know for the rest, or not for the rest of the transfer window, but we're going to need to sell some players in order to progress going forward. So let's go through the latest exit news. So Manchester United face the prospect of paying players millions to leave Old Trafford this summer, with buying clubs ready to exploit the need to offload players before the start of the Premier League season. United will look to negotiate salary recovery from loan deals for their players, although intermediaries believe their bargaining power has been undermined by clearly wanting players off their books. I would agree with that. That's why I didn't like all the public, the stuff going public with Garnacho as well, because it just devalues the player and it creates the wrong look. I don't like us airing our dirty laundry, but, we leak like a sieve, so everything leaks out of Manchester United, even the stuff that shouldn't and that's going on behind the scenes. It's just, it's where we are at the moment with everything, be it everything coming out at United. Salary recovery for loan deals. I actually thought, though, to be fair, so what this is effectively saying is that, look, if we're struggling to sell our players, we might end up having to do loan deals. And with the loan deals, United are going to look to get as much of their salaries paid as possible, because that helps us with PSR, because it still gives us wiggle room from a PSR perspective to get the wages off the books. So salary recovery, I actually thought we did all right with that, though, in January when we loaned out Rashford. I think they were paying a majority of his wages. Antony, Betis were paying a majority of his wages as well. Malacia, I think they were paying all of his wages, if I remember the deal rightly. So actually, we did some good loan deals in January. It's just not ideal, is it? Because ideally, we just want to get rid of these players, get the money in, get them permanently off the wage books, and so we can all move on with our lives. But, in order to do that, you need buyers. And I can't sit here and be a hypocrite and say this is the worst squad I've ever seen in my lifetime, and then expect there to be, multiple teams wanting to pay millions of pounds and thousands of pounds a week for the players that have contributed and are part of the worst squad that I've ever seen in my lifetime at Man United. It's just not realistic. And we're always going to struggle because we've overpaid for these players. We're paying them way above what their market value is in terms of their salary demands, in my opinion. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem, but we'll have to see how we get on. So if it is loans, what they're saying is that we want to get the maximum available, or the maximum wages covered by the loaning teams. It remains to be seen whether the out of favour players would go on tour to America in 2019. Romelu Lukaku appeared set to leave United and still toured with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's squad. So that all came from Mike McGrath, who's a good journalist as well, effectively saying, look, whether the players go on tour or not does not change the fact that we would want to sell them. So don't see that as a benchmark. Although it depends what Ruben Amorim wants, because Ruben Amorim is very strict and he wants to build that camaraderie and that dressing room environment. And whether he's going to want bad eggs going on tour, who knows? But he might be forced to, because if he doesn't, that then devalues the price of the players. What an absolute mess. Why can't we just get these players gone? But again, to get these players gone, you need buyers. And nobody's buying these players. For like, look at the Sancho situation. We'll go for him in a second. He's got an offer from Juventus and Napoli, but does he want to take a pay cut? And that's down to him. That's our fault for giving him that contract in the first place. But he's under contract. He doesn't have to do shit. You know what I mean? So it's just one of these. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. In the report, that Mike McGrath also said that Garnacho, Rashford and Brazil forward Antony have contracts until 2028, which United are now expecting to subsidise even if they leave the club and are playing for a rival. I don't think Garnacho's only on 50 grand a week, but Rashford's on £300,000 a week. Antony is on around... It's reported at 200,000, right? But I was checking on Capology the other day, and it's about £110,000 a week for Antony. So it's not the most excessive contract as well. But they've got long, still got 3-4 years left on their contract. Then they've got +1 options as well. So, but it is what it is. We are where we are. We just need to wait and see what happens with the players. Obviously, Garnacho, no real updates on him. He wants to stay in the Premier League. But there's literally radio silence on teams being interested or linked with him. Yes, we've had like Chelsea and Villa potentially interested, maybe Arsenal, but there's no movement. Nothing's happening regarding that. Rashford's waiting for Barcelona. Again, that looks like it might be a loan with a straight loan, or whether they would do an option to buy potentially, but we'll have to see how much of their salary they're willing to cover as well. Antony is the one that actually, to his credit, is wanting to leave, wanting to take a pay cut, and it actually has the right mentality and the right attitude. So credit where it's due for Antony. At least he wants to go and is happy to do whatever it takes to leave and get his move so he can go and play football somewhere where everybody else just seems to be, dragging their heels. But it is what it is. We are where we are. Bring you any updates when they come out. Give us your thoughts and shouts on that in the comments. Now, Ruben Amorim is willing to loan Andre Onana and find a new number one goalkeeper. Now, that came from Alan Nixon, who writes for The Sun, so we'll need to take that story with a pinch of salt. They did say that Manchester United are working on a replacement for Andre Onana, and Emi Martinez is a top target. Botafogo's John Victor is another option. He's available for £6 million. Brought you those stories before as well about John Victor. Emi Martinez is offering himself to United. I don't know how much United are interested in him, because it all depends if Onana goes. And at the moment, there's no real links with Onana leaving. So it's one of these. We need to wait and see how it plays out for the keeper situation. Sky Sports were saying that Manchester United target Emi Martinez has been offered to Chelsea, but the Argentine prefers a move to Old Trafford. So he's still wanting, he's trying to get himself a move to United, but whether that interest is reciprocated, we don't know. Again, a lot of it depends on Onana and Bayinda going, and so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. The Mirror was saying that Casemiro is set to stay at Manchester United next season after being offered a World Cup lifeline by Carlo Ancelotti. United will not stand in his way if he decides to cash in by moving to Saudi, though. So according to the Mirror, Casemiro set to stay and see out the final year of his contract, which was always believed to be the case. There was some interest, though, from Saudi Pro League, so whether they would come in or not, who knows whether he will want to go or not. The reports are he wants to stay for the final year of his contract. So again, we are where we are when it comes to that. Unless we get a big offer or something changes, then I'll bring you any updates regarding that. The latest on Rasmus Højlund, there's still no agreement between Inter Milan and Manchester United for Rasmus Højlund. They want a loan with an option to become an obligation with quite easy conditions, but United insist on a permanent transfer. So I think with this, United either want an obligation to buy up front or a permanent transfer, because it doesn't necessarily help us with PSR if it's a loan with an obligation, with an option to buy, because we can't write it off from a PSR perspective. But if it's an obligation to buy, we can. Obviously, a permanent sale gives us the cash to then potentially move into other areas as well. So again, we'll need to wait and see what happens with Inter. Man United insist on a permanent deal for Rasmus Højlund or he stays. So the stance at the moment between from United on Rasmus Højlund is permanent deal or no exit. Whether that would change though further down the line if we do get a striker in, potentially maybe they would accept an obligation to buy, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But give us your shouts on that in the comments below, as I am sure that you will. Now let's go through. So Antony. So Real Betis are planning to push for Antony from Manchester United. Talks in progress over a permanent deal. That came from Nico, saying that Betis are planning to push for Antony as well. So there's still heavy rumours regarding Antony and Real Betis. Mike McGrath said Manchester United have been talking about us about owning some of Antony's registration rights, which is effectively a sell-on clause if he's sold in the future. I don't understand the sort of deal they're trying to do. It's effectively they buy him, but they buy 50% of his registration rights, which means if he's sold next summer, we would get 50% of the money or some sort of deal like that as well. Who knows? As long as it's good for the club, they're the ones negotiating the deals, not for us to worry about how that deal is. As long as it's suitable for the club, we can get him off the wage bill and we get some money, and it allows us to go and spend money. Then that's all I'm particularly bothered about there. And finally, so Jadon Sancho. So according to Turkish outlet Fanatic, Jose Mourinho has pulled the plug on a transfer of Jadon Sancho from Manchester United to Fenerbahce. The report claims that a deal collapsed after the Portuguese tactician raised question about the winger's suitability. It is said that Mourinho only wants professionals in his squad. Chelsea turned their nose up at a chance to sign Sancho permanently for £25 million earlier this month, paying a £5 million penalty fee. So that was in the Manchester Evening News, suggesting that maybe Fenerbahce were talking or looking at Sancho. They presented it to Mourinho, and Mourinho was like, yeah, I only want professionals in this squad. So that's cancelled that deal. We need to wait and see what happens regarding that. I don't blame Mourinho for that neither as well, to be completely fair. Mike McGrath, though, in his report said that Jadon Sancho has 1 year left on his deal at United, but the club can trigger a 1 year extension, which would prevent him from leaving for free next summer. How would you feel about that? I think we should if he refuses to go, just to piss him off, just to literally piss him off. But then it's an expense to us as well, and we're still having to pay his wages, and then it actually makes things worse for us, because is it not a case that if we do the +1 on the player's contract, they're then entitled to half of the sell-on fee if we sell them within that year as well? So actually that makes zero sense. While it would be good to do just to if Sancho decides not to go, just to say, right, okay, we'll do a 2 year, we'll do the +1, then you can sit on the reserves for 2 years instead of 1 year as a way to force him out. It actually doesn't help us. I don't think doing that as much as it would maybe be an option, but we need to wait and see what plays out regarding it. It's still believed with Sancho, it's his wages. Unless he takes a pay cut, it's going to be difficult, I think, for Juve. Juve is seen as the front runners at the moment. They're the team heavily pushing for him, but he's got to reduce his wage demands, and that's the sticking point at the moment. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments. And then the final story I've got for you is regarding Darren Fletcher. So Darren Fletcher is the leading candidate for the vacant Manchester United under-18 manager position after Adam Lawrence's departure. That came initially from Sully talks, then confirmed by Laurie Whitwell, saying that Darren Fletcher is in discussions to take over as Manchester United's new under-18 head coach. Now that's good. He does want to get into management by all accounts, but he was been touted as doing this role before. But I think because his sons were in that age group, it would have been a conflict of interest if he was manager. So now that they're and they've stepped up at age group into the 21s, then now it's maybe open a pathway for Fletcher to get into management to do the under 18s. That's not a bad shout in my opinion. I'm not really bothered. I wish him all the best if he does take up that role as well, because he is actually, you think about all the exits behind the scene, the mass sackings and everything, then that Ineos have done with the best in class as well. Darren Fletcher's still been there, so he must be well liked behind the scenes as well, and clearly seen as he's good at his job and good at what he does as well. Otherwise, he would have been out the door with the rest of the hierarchy that have all gone in the 18 months since Ineos took over, and the mass exodus of other people behind the scenes as well. But we'll keep an eye on it for you. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.